morning, everyone. I hereby call to order the 16th meeting of the Public Utility Commission for calendar year 2012 and ask that you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get seated, I ask everybody to join us in the moment of silence to recognize the fallen victims of the tragic events of September 11th. Thank you. The first agenda item here this morning is to the approval of the minutes of the August 2nd meeting, and I believe Commissioner Whitmer, you are the editor of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the delegation from the great state of Pennsylvania proudly cast all of its votes for the minutes of August 2nd, 2012, put them over the top, and moved that they be approved as submitted.
Second. Seconded by the delegate from Sept County. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? The minutes are approved as submitted, and it's a pleasure to welcome to the podium this morning, begin public meeting, Ms. Cheryl Walker-Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
May it please this Honorable Commission, on behalf of the various officers of yours, we present for your consideration and disposition the following agenda items commencing this morning. The transportation matters on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services. In omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt all items appearing on pages 1 and 2 through and including the Gardner Moving Company item.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On page 3 of the agenda, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the Director of Administration recommendation with regard to the vendor selection for an information management system for gas safety inspections.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Commencing on page 4 with matters on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance. With regard to the first item pertaining to the informal settlement between the Law Bureau prosecutorial staff and the Bureau of Consumer Services versus Verizon, as well as an application for exemption from quality standards, there is your joint motion, Mr. Chairman, along with Vice Chairman Coleman. And there's also a statement by Commissioner Cawley.
Correct. We'd like to first start with having our joint motion entered into the record as read its entirety, and I'd like to recognize Vice Chairman Coleman for purposes of the motion. Vice Chairman Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before the Commission is a joint settlement agreement between Verizon PA, prosecutory staff, and the Bureau of Consumer Services. Also before the Commission is an application for temporary exemption from the provision of our Chapter 63 regulations filed by Verizon PA. The exemption application was filed pursuant to the terms of the joint settlement. The joint settlement seeks to resolve an informal investigation conducted by prosecutorial staff in Verizon PA's compliance with certain service quality rules in Chapter 63 of the Commission's regulations. The joint settlement addresses two specific service quality issues that arose during the informal investigation: missed appointments with customers and answers fee for Verizon PA operator-handled calls. The joint settlement also addresses service outages. For the reasons set forth in our joint motion, we believe the joint settlement and exemption application are in the public interest and should be approved. In sum, the settlement will directly benefit consumers by, one, ensuring that Verizon PA minimizes the number of instances in which it misses a repair appointment without notifying or attempting to notify the customer, and two, providing an additional $500,000 investment in Verizon PA's copper-based network in areas that are not otherwise scheduled for improvements and upgrades. In addition, the joint settlement and exemption application will result in the Commission's applying the same telephone access rules to Verizon PA that we currently apply to our electric distribution companies. Therefore, we move that the joint settlement and exemption application be approved consistent with this motion, and the Commission's Office of Special Assistance draft an appropriate order consistent with this joint motion.
And second motion.
Now I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cawley for purposes of his statement. Commissioner Cawley.
Thank you, Chairman. I respectfully will dissent. I ask that my 8-page dissent be placed on the record as if I had read it in its entirety. I must vigorously dissent. The settlement agreement between Verizon Pennsylvania and our prosecutory staff and Bureau of Consumer Services is not, in my view, in the public interest and should not be approved. Instead, the matter should be referred for mediation and further adjudication if needed. The approval of the settlement agreement provides an unfortunate and I think ill-timed signal that quality of service issues, especially service outages associated with Verizon Pennsylvania's network, do not really matter. And if and when quality of service standards cannot be met, then the application of these standards, which are prescribed by regulations which have force and effect of law, can be terminated in order to accommodate the interests of the utility in the settlement agreement. I find these outcomes greatly disturbing and not consistent with our statutory duty to exercise appropriate and consistent oversight over quality of service issues. When it comes to Verizon Pennsylvania's out-of-service network outages, a matter that really concerns me is that the $500,000, quote, targeted infrastructure investment contained in the settlement does not provide Pennsylvania consumers with the best possible deal. In fact, it's a drop in the bucket. It doesn't even give customers a good deal. These are investments that the company should have made anyway. As my statement explains in detail, Verizon Pennsylvania's affiliate in Maryland got a much better deal when it comes to quality of service metrics and out-of-service outages. Verizon Maryland was required by the Maryland Public Service Commission to place much bigger monetary amounts at risk for not meeting quality of service standards. In short, I don't think that Pennsylvania customers should be second-class customers and suffer to the benefit of other Verizon regional affiliates. Prosecutory staff informal investigations that result in settlements are customarily designed to bring infractions of a utility within pre-existing standards prescribed by our regulations. They do not eliminate a standard in order to fit a utility's alleged needs. But that's what's happening here. We are dealing with telephone speed of answer for operator-handled calls. Replacing the standard for Verizon Pennsylvania with a simple reporting requirement does not produce a benefit for Pennsylvania consumers. Instead, it may preserve and enhance this benefit for Verizon customers in neighboring states where their utility commissions continue to maintain such standards and vigorously enforce them. I fear that the result will be that Verizon will concentrate its resources in those states while Pennsylvania customers wait and wait and wait on the line. Instead, we should have preserved the standard rather than eliminated it, and we should have applied it. For these and the other reasons contained in my statement, I respectfully dissent from my colleagues' well-intentioned, but I fear inadequate, approval of this settlement agreement.
So noted. Let me just state for the record that I take exception to anybody referring to us as the Maryland Public Service Commission. So I recognize that in this light of regulatory issues that we deal with, this is certainly a complex issue. Lingers all the way back to 2008, and I think the actions taken here today by the majority sends a strong signal to the industry that we appreciate their investment here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. With that, are there any objections Hearing none, the motion passes 4-1, noting the dissenting statement of Commissioner Caldwell.
Continuing with the presentation of agenda items and matters on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, it should be noted at the top of page 5 that the item pertaining to the application of Samir Wakaroch has been postponed until public meeting of September the 27th. It is recommended that the Commission adopt the remaining item at the bottom of page 5 as well as all items appearing on pages 6 and 7 through and including the joint petition of Vista PCS LLC and Verizon North.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, it is recommended along with discussion that the Commission adopt all items appearing on pages 9, 10, and 11, and including Citizens Electric Company of Lewisburg, Wellsboro Electric, and Valley Energy Security Certificates.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Law Bureau, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the 2 items appearing on page 12, as well as the first item pertaining to the Act 129 Energy Efficiency Program, page 2 at the top of page 13.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
At the bottom of page 13, with regard to PECO Energy Company's petition for approval of an electric generation supplier as a vendor to provide time-of-use service for its dynamic pricing plan, as well as the approval of a plan supplement, there's the joint motion, Mr. Chairman, that you have along with Commissioner Whitmer.
Thank you. I'd like to have our joint motion entered into the record as read in its entirety before the Commission here this morning. For disposition are several petitions related to PECO's time-of-use rate plan. By way of background, Act 129 of 2008 requires default service providers, DSPs, to submit proposals to the Commission to provide time-of-use or real-time rate products to consumers. Due to widespread and systematic issues with PPL's time-of-use rate offering, the Commission subsequently recommended in its retail market investigation that the Commonwealth's current default service providers, the electric distribution companies, contract with electric generation suppliers to provide a TOU or real-time pricing option to customers. On January 24th of this year, PECO issued a request for proposal seeking vendors to implement a comprehensive dynamic pricing pilot through the provisions of supplying electricity at a TOU rate and the implementation of program management. PECO selected Reliant as the winning bidder for the electric supply portion of the pilot and filed an instant petition which seeks approval of this selection along with the supplement to the original January 24th RFP dated April 2012. In its petition, PECO Energy essentially is seeking 3 things. 1, approval of its vendor selection to provide a time-of-use rate service and management for the pilot program, and a finding that the plan, as supplemented, fulfills the requirements set forth in Act 129. It's also seeking approval of the company's cost recovery mechanism through its generation supply adjustment filing. I also think it's important to note here this morning that Reliant has been very, aggressive or proactive, in this state in their investment in providing customers a number of quality products as a generation supplier. So I think here this morning we are approving Reliant as the time-of-use rate provider for PECO Energy. And it is clear for customers that are going to be participating in this TOU pilot, they are choosing Reliant as their electric generation supplier. Now, the Public Utility Code and the Commission regulations make it clear that the electric distribution company shall not change a retail end user's customer choice of generation supply without the customer's consent. These customers that will sign up in this pilot program, therefore, should remain with Reliant unless they affirmatively choose to receive service from an alternative energy supplier here in the Commonwealth. Moreover, aside from any slamming concerns or arguments that may be made, it is not in the public interest to automatically transfer customers back to default supply with PECO. Following the closure of the pilot program, however, Reliant must maintain any remaining program customers on a time-of-use rate. Further, customers should feel free to leave Reliant at any time without being subject to a termination fee or any other switching restrictions for as long as they remain on a post-program time of use rate. Lastly, I think my colleagues and I feel compelled to mention that the Commonwealth's EDCs do not own their customers. We feel strongly that electric distribution companies here in the Commonwealth in a post-restructuring environment must rid themselves of this mindset, which is, as I said yesterday in Baltimore, the fault supply as we know it is a dying relic. And therefore this morning, one, the petition of PICO requesting expedited approval of the vendor to provide a time of use rate service for the company's dynamic pricing plan is approved as consistent with this motion. And second, the petition of PICO for approval of its plan supplement is approved in part and denied in part consistent with this motion. Third, the petition of Reliant is approved in part and denied in part consistent with this motion. And then finally, the Office of Special Assistance prepared an opinion in order consistent with this motion. Second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gardner.
I will respectfully dissent on the motion.
So noted. The motion passes 4-1, noting the dissent of Commissioner Gardner.
Continuing with the presentation of agenda items, it is recommended that the Commission adopt on page 14 the remaining Law Bureau item with regard to changes to the Act 129 Technical Reference Manual.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Office of Administrative Law Judge, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the first item pertaining to ALJ Malilla's initial decision in the Wayne Allen Stewart versus People Energy Company case.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
With regard to the NRG Energy Center of Harrisburg application to abandon steam service of 7 segments of its system in Harrisburg, there is Commissioner Cawley's motion.
I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cawley for purposes of his motion.
Again, thank you, Chairman. NRG Energy Center Harrisburg LLC filed an application for abandonment, seeking Commission approval to abandon steam service to 7 segments of its low-pressure steam system in the city of Harrisburg. NRG alleges that these 7 segments have deteriorated and are uneconomic to repair. NRG also seeks to concentrate on its core business of serving Commonwealth government customers and asserts that it is necessary to shrink its system and reduce lost and unaccounted for steam so that it may remain economically viable. A general settlement has been entered into by the parties setting forth the relevant terms and conditions of abandonment, and separate transition services settlement agreements were entered into by NRG and the Broad Street Market and Historic Harrisburg, and were filed simultaneously with the general settlement for Commission review and approval. The terms outlined in these settlement agreements are consistent with Commission procedure in the approval of such abandonments, but our order should be modified to include an ordering paragraph requiring that notice of compliance be filed with the Secretary of the Commission by NRG upon the completion and satisfaction of the terms and conditions set forth in the settlement agreements and the completion of each of the individual abandonments subject to these settlement agreements. In other words, we want to make sure that they have completed the work as promised in the settlement agreements. Therefore, I move that the Office of Special Assistance prepare an order consistent with this motion.
Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Continuing now with regard to matters on pages 16 and 17, Mr. Chairman, we have 2 matters that are non-sequential, that being the first item on page 16, Deborah Simconis versus People's Natural Gas Company, and the Teresa Carrata versus People's Natural Gas Company case on the middle of page 17, for which we have one motion.
Right, I'd like to have the motion entered into the record as it read in its entirety. Before us this morning for disposition are 2 formal complaints. One is Teresa Carrata versus People's Natural Gas and Deborah Simconis versus People's Natural Gas. While not consolidated, both complaints raised the same issue, whether Peoples provided unreasonable service by paying to replace the risers for certain customers but not others. In both cases, people sought to have the complaints dismissed, and in both cases, the ALJs found that the Commission does not have jurisdiction since maintenance of risers in the service territory are within the purview of customers, not the utility. I strongly disagree with that assessment, and I therefore believe that these cases should be remanded to address the questions set forth in my written motion here this morning, as well as any others that may arise during the course of the litigation. For the sake of the judicial economy, however, these matters should be consolidated into a single proceeding. Therefore, here this morning, I move that these matters be remanded and consolidated for purposes set forth herein, and that finally the Office of Special Assistance prepare an opinion order consistent with this motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Continuing with items on page 16 with regard to Richard Chase versus PPL Electric Utilities and ALJ for his initial decision there appearing. There is a motion of Commissioner Whitmer.
I'd like to recognize Commissioner Whitmer for purposes of her motion. Commissioner Whitmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to read my motion. Ray Chase, the complainant in this proceeding, filed a formal complaint against PPL Electric Utilities Corporation, requesting to be removed from PPL's monthly budget billing plan. Despite the fact that the complainant expressly wrote on the formal complaint form that she had no phone, a telephonic hearing was scheduled and held in this proceeding. In the initial decision, the administrative law judge dismissed the complaint with prejudice for failure to prosecute because Ms. Chase failed to provide a telephone number for participation in the hearing and was unreachable at the time of the hearing. Upon review of the record, it also appears that the pre-hearing order was never sent to the complainant. Specifically, the service list attached to the pre-hearing order neither includes Ms. Chase's name or address. As a result, it's impossible to know whether Ms. Chase ever received the pre-hearing order as indicated in the initial decision. In addition to this deficiency, as a matter of course, when a complainant states that she does not have a telephone, I believe that it's improper to schedule a telephonic hearing. Accordingly, I recommend that this case be remanded and an in-person hearing be scheduled in Harrisburg with the clear understanding that if Ms. Chase does not participate in the rescheduled hearing, her complaint may be dismissed for failure to prosecute. Therefore, I move that the Office of Special Assistance prepare an opinion and order consistent with this motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt ALJ Salapa's initial decision in the Christian Pine versus PPL Electric Utilities Corporation case at the bottom of page 16 as well as the ALJ has recommended decision pertaining to the Audubon Water Company settlement at the top of page 17.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
With Teresa Kalapa having been disposed of along with the Deborah Simcona's case, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommended decision of ALJ Buckley with regard to Columbia Gas's purchase gas costs.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
And on page 18, with regard to ALJ Salapa's initial decision in the proceeding involving Megan Mon versus PPL Electric Utilities Corporation, there is a motion of Commissioner Gardner.
I'd like to recognize Commissioner Gardner for purposes of the motion. Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like my motion to be entered into the record as if I read it in its entirety. The complainant in this matter states that PPL harvests trees under a power line that runs through a property. The complaint alleges that the trees were stacked in two huge piles under the power line that is very near to the complainant's front door, and among other things, is an attractive nuisance for local children and a possible source of liability. According to the complainant, PPL has promised to remove the piles of lumber since the trees were harvested in 2010. However, the timber was still there when this complaint was filed in 2012. In its answer, PPL admits that it has been storing a small portion of the timber on the complainant's property. PPL also admits
that it has failed to abide by the complainant's request to remove the timber for more than 2 years. PPL filed preliminary objections asking for the dismissal of this complaint because the Commission does not have subject matter jurisdiction over property-related claims. The ALJ agreed with PPL and dismissed the complaint in its entirety. I agree with the ALJ that the Commission does not have jurisdiction over real property disputes and that the dismissal of that portion of the complaint was appropriate. However, I believe that this complaint also presents service issues over which the Commission cannot abdicate its responsibility. Vegetation management is an integral part of electric distribution service. In addition, Section 1501 of the Code requires public utilities to furnish and maintain adequate, efficient, safe, and reasonable service and facilities. Therefore, the manner in which the public utility conducts its vegetation management is within this Commission's jurisdiction. I believe that remand of this matter to the Office of Administrative Law Judge is appropriate so that fact-finding regarding PPL's action in this matter may occur. Therefore, I move that the Office of Special Assistance prepare an opinion and order consistent with this motion.
Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, the Commissioner Sept concludes the presentation of regular agenda items. Turning now to the carrying agenda. On page 1, on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, it's recommended that the Commission adopt a recommendation pertaining to the Peregrine Keystone Gas Pipeline LLC petition to withdraw.
So moved. Second. Any discussion?
Yes, Chairman. I wish to concur in the result only based on my prior position in the application of Laser Northeast Gathering Company LLC for approval to begin to offer, render, furnish, or supply natural gas gathering and transporting or conveying service by pipeline to the public in certain townships of Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, at docket number A 2010-215-3371.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Whitman.
I too would like to be recorded as concurring in the result only based on my previous position in the Laser proceeding.
Would any of you like to remind us about the Laser proceeding? Just kidding, Commissioner. I'm making sure you're paying attention here. Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0, noting the Commissioner's colleague in Whitmer will be concurring in result only.
On page 2 of the carrying agenda, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendation pertaining to the general rate increase request of the Borough of Quakertown.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
And on page 3 of the agenda at the top, it's recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendation pertaining to the First Energy Company's all service plan petitions for reconsideration.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
And at the bottom of page 3, as well as on page 4, it is recommended that the Commission adopt all of the staff recommendations there appearing on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services.
So moved. Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, that does conclude the presentation of agenda items.
Are there any other items to come before the Commission here this morning?
I believe you have an announcement, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we'll be reconvening here in hearing room 1, I believe at 1:30 for the PICO Smart Meter briefing. I repeat, briefing here this afternoon, and we encourage you to join us. With that, we're adjourned.